On this episode, we welcome Ed back from his big trip overseas and ask him questions about reverse culture shock, or if that even exists.
So if you're curious about the issues that expats deal with when they return home after being away for a while, you'll love this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001, and as evidenced by today's shit show of moisture, still forgets to bring an umbrella with him to work so he can get home dry.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 18 years ago, fell in love with how easy it is to get food delivery in Bangkok, and I never left.
Nice.
I'm lazy, what can I say? Before we start, a huge thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. For more info on how you can become a patron, just head to the support page on BangkokPodcast.com. And of course, one of the cool things our patrons get is an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we talk about current events in Thailand and basically whatever else comes into our minds. We just finished recording this week's bonus show and we chatted about Bangkok's various food delivery services, which today happened to bring me a delicious veggie burger, which got us talking about the Impossible Burger, which I had back home in the States, and how they may have finally cracked the code when it comes to making a veggie burger taste like a real meat burger. So become a patron, check out that episode, and have your mind blown.
My question is, if they really do nail the Impossible Burger and make it taste just like a real hamburger, will vegetarians be like, man, I miss those crappy tasting vegetarian burgers?
Dude, there's a lot of other, like black bean burgers are good. They just don't taste like meat. So
Yeah,
maybe people will be in the mood for a black bean burger.
I guess so, yeah. This fake beef burger's good, but I want a bean burger. Yeah. All right, well, before we jump into it, we have to mention a few quick things. First, I want to give a quick shout out to Mr. Santos Diaz, who is a crew member on the official Bangkok podcast ocean vessel, the Daisy May in New York City. Now, our buddy Ashley says Santos wants to come to Asia, but doesn't know much about it. So Santos, get a ticket, bro. Come on and say hi. We'll show you the ropes in Bangkok. Actually, Ashley is your captain, and he comes to Bangkok quite often, so he can show you the ropes, and me and Ed will tag along, because knowing Ashley, he's probably seen and done things that you and I have only dreamed of, Ed.
Probably.
And second, we are going to be having another Bangkok podcast meetup in the next month or so. We'll announce it when we nail down a date, but keep your ears peeled for that. And it should be a good time, just like the last few times. But we are planning something that'll happen pretty soon.
Definitely.
All right, so on this episode, we want to welcome Ed back home after his big trip to the US of A to see his sister get married. And we want to talk a little bit about, well, I have in the notes here, it says reverse culture shock, but we're going to talk about why that might not be an accurate term. So I'm going to quiz Ed with a few questions and ask him if he experienced any of the most common side effects of returning home after living overseas for so long. And I want to get into a few other topics that I find interesting that are related to moving back home after being in a new country for a number of years. So Ed, give us a summary of your trip. Was it successful?
Yeah, it was a successful trip. It's funny because on the surface, you would think going back home was really not that big a deal, except this is the first time I've gone back to the States in 4 years. I'm actually kind of embarrassed to say that. We talked about it a little bit on the bonus show. But now that I've been here, basically 18 and a half years, I just don't go back as much as I used to. In the early days, I was going back once or twice a year.
Right.
But over time, it's just slowly stretched out, man. And I just don't get back very often. And this was the longest by far. And like 4 years is a long time. Like a lot of stuff changes in 4 years.
People can have 4 children in 4 years.
No doubt. I mean, it's funny because when I went 4 years ago, my niece was graduating from high school. And when I went back this time, she was graduating from university. It's like I missed her 4 years of college.
Oh, that must have been trippy.
Yeah, so kids, as all parents know, kids do grow up fast. And some of my sisters have kids, and my friends have kids. So it was just crazy seeing some of my buddies' kids and how big they are and how grown up they are. It's really kind of weird and kind of mind blowing.
Yeah, tell me about it.
But it was I would say it was a good trip. Let me just preface it this way: like obviously I've gone back to the States a lot over the years, and I always like it. I always have a good time. So I'm not one of those expats. I don't know if you've encountered this. This is a good question I got for you. Before you get into your questions for me, I got a question for you.
All right.
There's a certain type of American expat in Thailand that basically has become kind of anti-American. They're not necessarily haters, or it's not like they're not patriotic, but they just, in my mind, I feel like they really want to build up their life choice of being in Thailand. So it's like when I talk to them about going back to the States, they're always like, "Oh God, what a drag! Like it just sucks. It's this, it's that."
Interesting.
They really have this attitude that the States has become like a nightmare for one reason or another. Whatever, it doesn't matter what the reason is, but I have expat friends who they really have this mentality that like they're so happy they're in Thailand. It's like, it's like they've really made this smart move. No, I want to know are there Canadian expats who say that about Canada? Like, I'm so glad I got out of that place.
That's really interesting because I 100% agree, but I think you're using the wrong terminology. I just think I think people in general, once they leave the safety of their home country or culture and live overseas for long enough that they can sort of become comfortable, I don't think it's Canadian or American or British or German or whoever. I just think anyone would probably start to think like, man, I'm so glad I'm not back there anymore dealing with all the crap that goes on. And it's interesting because I was dealing with this today. I was chatting with my sister online for quite a while today. And I told her I have this really funny video of my son telling me, he goes, "Daddy, no more junk food, no more candy, no more sugar." And I say, "Why?" And he goes, "Because you are fat." And
really?
Yeah, and it's
That's great.
I mean,
That's great.
Dude's not lying, but he says that because I have told him that I am fat. I'm explaining to him that like you need to exercise, you need to eat healthy, otherwise you'll be like Daddy who's fat, and it's not good, it's not healthy, it's not safe. So I'm trying to turn my failure into a teachable moment, right? So anyway,
excellent.
So my sister saw this and she was like shocked. She was like, "That is so rude." Like she was serious. And I said, "Yeah, but it's not a big thing over here." Like,
oh, so it was rude for your son to call you fat, even though you were the one who told him.
Well, she didn't know.
Fat.
She didn't know that. She just saw the video of him calling me fat, and she's like,
"Oh, okay."
And I said, "Well, yeah, but it's like my wife's mom calls her fat all the time because whenever a Thai person hasn't seen another Thai person for a year or two, and the first thing they say is, 'Oh, you've gotten so fat,' And
yes,
I think we've all taken a long time we had to get used to that. Like I've said on the show before, in Canada, I'm Greg, like the big guy with thinning hair. In Thailand, I'm Greg, the fat bald guy. Right? It's just a cultural thing.
Well,
so I was trying to explain to my sister, I'm like, this is like, it's a cultural thing. You just have to get used to it. And she was like, no, I wouldn't put up with that. Like it's just, and I said, well, it's a Western thing. And I got talking to her and I was like, Western culture is so far up its own ass. Like it's just, they've turned being angry into like a hobby. Like they're angry about everything. They're offended about everything. And I said to her, I'm so glad I'm not involved in that anymore.
Well, obviously there are some, obviously I'm happy here. So by definition, I there are some things I don't like about the States, or some things I like about here better than the States because I stay here.
Right.
I don't really connect with these expats who rip on the States. I just don't get it. I'm happy I'm here, but when I go back, I always have a good time and I really like it. And I do think about, God, I wonder if I can make it work back here, or you know what I'm saying?
I feel the same way. And don't get me wrong, like I've got the Canadian flag tattooed on my heart, like it's never going away, and I'm proudly Canadian until the day I die. But I think it's a difference between we've talked about this before, the difference between coming to Thailand as a tourist and coming to Thailand to live. It's a big difference, and I think it goes the other way as well. You going back home as a tourist, which is essentially what you are.
Oh, sure.
is way different.
Obviously, like I told my buddies, like if I move back to the States, I'm not sure I can move back to Ohio because I don't think I can deal with the weather. Like I definitely, even though it's hot as hell over here, and sometimes I can't believe how hot and humid it is, I definitely prefer to like the freezing winters of northeastern Ohio. So
Yeah.
So there's definitely some things I don't like about the States, and especially where I grew up. I don't know. I'm just not a hater. Like when I'm back there, I'm like, wow, this is cool. I like this, and I start remembering stuff that I liked. And so anyway, I just wanted to preface, before I get into all the details of my trip, I just wanted to say that I'm not really like a hater. When I go back, I usually like it, but I definitely had weird experiences. I'm not sure I would call it like reverse culture shock. That might be a little bit strong, but there were just certain realizations I had that really made me feel like I was in a different place.
Oh yeah.
So I know you've got some questions. Let me give you a couple of my takes first,
Sure.
and then we'll get into like your questions. So this happened to me several times, and in a way it's obvious, but it really kind of hit me strongly, and that was how fast everything got done. So, for example, I had to get a SIM card, so I would have a local phone number there.
Right.
So I went to AT&T, and I walk in. There's a saleswoman there. I'm like, hey, how are you? I'm like, hey, I need a SIM card, and she just asked me a few questions. I give her some information. Bada bing, bada boom, da 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 da. I pay the money, and like I walk out. And I was like standing on the sidewalk, and I was just like, wait, that only took like 5 minutes.
Right.
It was just totally smooth. It just went smoothly. There was no miscommunication, like no delays, like no confusion.
No one said, hang on. Let me get someone else who knows how to speak to you.
It just went exactly like it's supposed to go. And it was like, it really messed with my head a little bit, because I'm just like, wait a minute, because I think as expats here, and I think there's a couple things going on. Obviously, language is the main thing, but it's also like the Thai way of doing things. The Thai way of doing things is just casual. Like Thai people never seem to think anything is an emergency or anything is really important. Like everything is casual. Nothing is a rush. You know what I mean? And so
Sabai.
Yeah, everything. So it's like, for example, when my buddy came here, and I got a SIM for him. So I basically got an extra SIM for myself, but
right.
Gave it to him. It was a kind of a pain in the ass, like to register it and do that stuff, and so that probably took like 30 or 40 minutes to get like a SIM for my buddy. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I've forgotten what it's like to be in your own country, where you speak the language and people understand what you're saying, you understand what they're saying,
right? And
there's just like a meeting of the minds,
right?
It's like she understood me, I understood her, and it just went smoothly. And I'm so used to there always being a hitch. There's always a hitch. There's always a problem. Like a quick story related to the trip. So one problem I've had before when I've traveled is sometimes my ATM cards from Thailand will work in the States, and sometimes they won't. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and so I'm aware of this problem, and I remembered, even though I haven't been back in 4 years. So I went to 2 different Thai banks where I have cards, and I wanted to verify with them that my card would work.
Oh,
yeah. So so I want to let them know. I'm like, because sometimes sometimes when you're traveling, if you try to use your card like halfway around the world, sometimes it gets flagged for security reasons.
Sure, which I think is a good system.
Right. So I went to I had the wherewithal to go to the bank ahead of time and inform them, like, okay, hey, I'm going to the States this week. I want to make sure that I can withdraw money from my Thai bank accounts, or use this card, this debit card, let's say. It seems like such a simple thing, but I was sitting in SCB for 45 minutes. and it's like you said, it's like, let me get the supervisor, let me get the manager. And I'm like, I just want to know, like, is my card going to work in the States or not? Do you have to do something? Do you have to unlock it for international use?
And if you said, is there going to be a problem, or is everything going to be okay? And they'll just go, yes. Right.
Well, so I got frustrated. I got one of my students to help me out just to make sure that the communication was clear. I grab a student of mine. I bring her to the bank. Now she's talking to someone. She gets on the person at the bank is like, okay, we got to talk to a higher level person. And so the person at the bank has a mobile phone, and they have like a higher level person on the phone. And so I hand the phone to my student to be like the translator.
Right.
And then the higher level person is like, well, I can't talk to you because I can only talk to the account holder. And so then they give me the phone, and I say, "Can you speak?" "Can you speak English?" And she says, "No, I can't speak English." So they won't let me use a translator to straighten this whole thing out. So I go through this whole thing, 45 minutes, and they assure me my card will work, like an ATM card that is also a debit card. They assure me it will work.
Okay.
And so this is a perfect travel story. So I fly into JFK, and I learn, which I did not know this. So Americans out there, you will be laughing at me, but I didn't know this. But now on almost all American airlines, when you fly domestically, you do not get any free checked bags.
Really?
Zero free checked bags for domestic flights.
Those scam artists.
Yeah, and so what I did, because I was trying to get a cheap flight, is I flew from Bangkok to JFK, but then I went through customs, and then I got on a domestic flight.
Okay.
So it's like my bags didn't get checked all the way to my hometown. So I switched to a domestic thing, and then they tell me that I got to pay for my bag. Okay. So it's like $30. It's basically 1,000 baht for my bag. So of course I've got dollars, I've got cash, and I'm going, okay, here's $30. And the woman at the airline, at Delta Airlines, is like, we only take credit cards.
Really?
Which to me is messed up, because like dollars are like legal tender. It's like the official money.
Don't they
like
have to take money? Don't they have to legally required to take money?
Well, they know. She said, no, this is JFK. This is Delta at JFK. She's like, you need a card. And I'm like, no problem. I got my pre-approved. I went to my bank before I left Thailand. Hello, I'm totally ready for this.
Right.
Hand my card to her. She runs it, declined.
Oh, no.
It's perfect. It was just like, it was my first interaction in the States that I had thought ahead to be ready for that moment.
Right.
Declined. And so luckily the second card worked. So it's like, I was like, whatever.
Okay.
But so anyway, I made it through, but it just shows you how weird travel is, and how you can think you're prepared and you've done everything. So it's like, so basically I went through all that trouble at the Thai bank, and then it didn't work.
Right.
And so but then when I'm back home, I can't say everything went well. I have to think about it a little bit, but basically I feel like everything went well. It's like, it's just smoother and faster. And so I think it's a combination of language and culture. I don't think it's all language. I think some of it is Thai culture.
Yeah. Right. Like the fat thing. Yeah.
So that was one of my first things. It's like, it was just like, it's just a weirder, it sounds strange. And in a way, this might be a reason why it might be bad to be an expat here, because we get used to things just not working out, and we just get used to it. Like, we get used to like the inefficiency or the delay, and like for me, I literally forgot what it was like for things just to go well and smoothly.
Right.
I forgot what that's like.
Well, you know what they say, the benefit of being a pessimist is that you're either constantly being proven right or pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So anyway, so my second observation, it's not really the same thing, was in a way this relates a little bit to the bonus show where we were talking about food delivery. When I judge distances in Bangkok, I based on the distance, I know how long it's going to take. So, like for example, for me to go from where I live, let's say to Tonglor, I know it's going to be an hour to an hour and a half.
Okay.
Whatever. And I don't know what the distance as the crow flies is, whatever it is. I don't know, 10 kilometers. I have no idea what it is.
Okay.
But the weird thing is when I was home, I was talking to my mom and my sisters, and we were making plans for the day. Like, my sister's like, let's go eat lunch here. And I'm like, I don't have time to do that. Like, it's going to take us forever. And she's looking at me like I'm really strange. And I'm like, I don't want to go all the way over there. And she's just looking at me funny. And I just forgot what it's like in the American suburbs because there's no traffic. And we can just pop on a highway. Like we have an efficient highway system. So it's like, even though we had to go 2 stops on the highway, it took 12 minutes.
Really?
To go from like,
oh, man.
to go from my mom's house to get on the highway go 2 stops on the highway to get off and to go to this restaurant she wanted to go to. It was like 12 minutes.
It takes me 12 minutes to pull out of my soy and do a U-turn so I can go and stop at a traffic light.
I know. It's like, I just forgot what it's like.
Interesting.
That's not necessarily like an American Thai thing. It might just be like a suburban versus, because obviously if you're in the Thai suburbs, things must go faster. Yeah. But I'm so used to bad traffic. It's just I factor that into everything, and when I go back to the States, I realize, oh my God, like there's just not bad traffic. Like I could just drive.
Right.
I could just drive unimpeded.
Right. I have to load up my phone with podcasts for the drive to keep me entertained.
That's right. That's right. Those were 2 of my biggest observations. But
well, let me ask you a few questions then, because I was thinking about my experiences when I went back home, and I grew up in Calgary, and when I lived there, my memories of it are as a vibrant, colorful, exciting, artistic city. And I probably have talked about this on the show before, like maybe in season 2 with Evo. And I talked when my wife and I went back in 2008, which was the second last time I was back. I talked it up a lot. I'm like, yeah, you're going to love it. It's going to be so fun and cool. And we can go here and do this. And long story short, I got there and I was like, this city is horrible. It's just gray and dreary and dull and boring and ugly. Compared to Bangkok, it's just so dead and lifeless. And there was nothing there to excite us. And my wife was really underwhelmed as well. So my question is, did you see your city or your home any differently than you thought you would? Like, you're like, oh, I'm looking forward to this. And when you got there, you're like, oh, that's not as good as I thought it was going to be.
The short answer is no. So I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland is much smaller than Bangkok. So Cleveland, I think, is about 1 million people, and Bangkok's like up to 12 million.
Okay, that's the same size as Calgary, where I'm from.
Okay, and Bangkok is, I tell my students this all the time, and they look at me kind of funny, but I tell them like Bangkok is way more advanced than my hometown. Like we have like one train. We have like one train line basically. So we don't have a subway. We don't have an elevated train. Obviously we have skyscrapers, but I don't know how many we have. Like
right,
10.
Right.
We probably have 10, something like that.
Okay.
Bangkok's got like 50, 60, something like that. But at the same time, culturally, Cleveland is actually pretty cool. It doesn't seem like it would be that because it's like a Rust Belt state and city, and it's used to be like a steel town, and it snows like crazy. But actually, Cleveland, like culturally, is pretty cool. So when I go back, there's always stuff I want to. It's funny because I was back for a wedding. There were a lot of people in from out of town. For my sister's wedding. And so some of them were kind of like tourists in Cleveland, and they went to like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which I didn't have time to go to, but if I had time, I would have gone down there. I've been there before, but they always change the exhibits.
Oh, cool.
And the other thing I did there which was amazing. It's funny. I use the word amazing. One thing that Cleveland has is a very good independent / like art movie theater, which Bangkok now really lacks, especially since the Lido has closed.
Right.
And so I went to this.
House
is okay, but House tends to show a lot of Asian cinema, which is great. but so which is fantastic. But we don't really have a movie theater in Bangkok that shows a lot of American independent films anymore. That's another show. We should do another show on independent film and where to watch movies in Bangkok. Right. That's another show. But anyway, there's a very famous independent movie theater in Cleveland on the east side called the Cedar Lee Theater. So shout out to the Cedar Lee and my east side homies. But I went to Cedar Lee. And I saw this Aretha Franklin documentary called Amazing Grace. Okay. Which was awesome. Like I couldn't believe it was playing. Like I was reading about it here before I left, and then I just go to Cedar Lee and boom, it's playing. Like I said, like everything's easy. It's like when I was over there, it's like the stuff I wanted to do was very accessible.
Right.
So I don't like in general. I like it back home. I think I would hate the winter.
Yeah.
Other than that, I like being back home.
Another question. Today at lunch, I was walking to Burger King with some coworkers of mine. Shout out to Scott and Dave. And we walked by one of these pretties in the mall that had a microphone and was squawking about something that was way too loud and annoying. But we commented as we walked by, this is annoying, but it's not as annoying as it would be if I could understand what she was saying. So it's easy to block it out. Like it just becomes like wah, 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 background noise. So we were talking about it, and I said like it must be crazy when you go home, and suddenly you can hear everyone around you and what they're saying. Like it would be almost like now if I go to a restaurant in Bangkok and I sit next to a table that's speaking English, like I can't help but overhear what they're talking about. So did you find that at all? Was it distracting? Because I think that kind of freaked me out. Like when I go to a co-working space or a Starbucks or something, I love sitting there because I know that it's easy for me to block out everything around me.
Well, first off, I think this is a great question, and it's fascinating that you brought this up because way back in the day, so this is probably 25 years ago, a good buddy of mine did a year abroad in Japan. He taught English in Japan for a year. This was 25 years ago. Okay. And when he came, I was asking him about it, and he said to me, one of the things I really liked is I couldn't understand what people are saying, so I could just ignore everyone around me. And I remember him telling me that, and I remember thinking like, that's really weird. I remember thinking like, why would you not want to understand people around you? Like, wouldn't that be? I thought it would be very alienating and like a negative thing. Right. But I am totally with you because when I was back in the States, I was distracted by all the conversations around me. So really, like you're exactly on point. Like when I was in a restaurant, I think I was with my sister. I could just hear all the conversations, and it was distracting to me because in Thailand they just don't distract me because I can't understand what they're saying anyway. Right.
You have to concentrate if you really want to follow what's going on. Like
that's right. Yeah. So I agree with you. There's something peaceful about basically being able to ignore what most people are saying.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Like you are kind of in your own bubble, but that is kind of peaceful. And then like basically you can choose to engage when you want to. Because obviously I do have basic Thai, so I can, and most Thai people have basic English, so I can engage when I want to. But the bottom line is I can just ignore most of what's going on around me.
Yeah, but you decide when the environment intrudes or comes into your bubble.
I agree with that 100%. I noticed it.
Interesting.
And I do find it distracting, and it's kind of I do like living in my own bubble, I guess.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, put on a pair of headphones and it just makes it almost impenetrable. It's perfect. All right, and one last question here. What types of questions did you get about Thailand from people you met?
Interesting. Well, this is a little bit tricky because everyone I saw, actually almost everyone I saw, has known me for a long time. And since I've been here so long, I've already talked to them about Thailand many times. It's
Right.
like, so when I first moved here, and I've only been here a year or two, and I go back, it's like I got 1,000 questions about what's it like, what's this, what's
Sure.
that, are people riding elephants, like that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
But it's like now it's like my family and friends, like they've got some Thai knowledge, and so I don't get like those type of basic questions. But when I was at the wedding, and there were some out of town people, I did get some kind of basic questions about Thailand, but nothing too weird, just questions about like where I work and what's it like being a professor in Thailand. So nothing too unusual. I did get some questions about Thai politics because I think there's been some things in the news in the States about the king's coronation, and then of course
Right.
the recent election. So I did give a couple quick primers on Thai politics.
Oh, that's good. So Thailand is breaking through the news bubble, and it's making its way across the ocean.
A little bit, yeah. It's kind of interesting for me to see how Americans view Thailand, and obviously Thailand is on the international stage somewhat,
Right.
so they do hear news. So they hear like major news.
Yeah. How are your relationship with your friends? Like old buddies of yours? Are you still tight with them?
Basically good. So we've had this conversation before about how because of the distance and the time, it's like you all have to make choices, and there's just certain people you can keep up with, and certain people you can't. But I've already been through that, so it's like the people certain people have been filtered away, but that happened like 10 or 15 years ago.
Right.
The people I keep in touch with are just rock solid, and so these are either friends of mine I knew in junior high or high school, or friends of mine from college. When I go back there and when I see my family and friends, I do feel torn, because I'm again, we did a previous show about this, but damn, like you miss a lot, man. Like there are downsides to being an expat. There's positives, but there's negatives, man. And when I go back and see my friends with their families and their kids being older and my nieces being older, and it's painful, man. It's like you miss a lot.
Yeah.
You miss a lot.
Yeah, you've got to embrace it. You got to accept it. Like you just have to realize that you're going to not be there for major family events, and you're always going to be the weird uncle who lives in the weird city on the other side of the world.
That's right. I mean, you just you have to accept it to some extent.
Luckily, I was the weird guy even when I lived back home, so I'm used to it. All right, well, good to have you back, man. Let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us surprises the other with a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something that we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept it as just part of the crazy city of Bangkok. So this week, man, to welcome you back, you're up.
All right, Greg, I'm not sure how much this has happened to you, but it's happened to me a bunch. And basically the idea is someone approaches you either in public, or it could be like through a friend, but it's some Thai person who needs to do a survey or marketing research or on a project for school, and they're supposed to talk to Farongs about something. So it's like the Farong survey situation. And I feel like this happens. Okay, if it happened once every 5 years, I would not think about it. But I feel like I get asked to fill out a Farong survey like once every 6 months.
Really?
It's like someone is asking me something. Like it could be students who are in an assignment and they want to know. I remember once I got approached and someone wanted to ask what I thought about like Suvarnabhumi Airport or something like that. And then one time I got approached by students who were like marketing students at a university, and they had questions for me. And then about a month ago, I was on the boat going across the river, and this guy had this survey on his phone that was a class project, and he had to like find like 20 foreigners in Bangkok and ask them these questions on his phone. It was like a Google form that I like filled out. So I don't know. Has this happened to you?
Yeah, it has happened to me, although probably only half a dozen times in my time here. I think probably you get it more because you live or you work around a student heavy area, and you probably see a lot more young students than I would. But yeah, when it happens, I'm happy to do it. I love it. I think it's cool, and I'm happy to help them out, and it shows that foreigners can be approachable and friendly and nice, and I'm helping them to hopefully maintain their curiosity and expand their knowledge. Yeah, sign me up, man. I'm all for it. I love it.
All right. Well, you have a good attitude. I'll tell you this. I was traveling in Japan a while back, and this happened to be in Japan. So I'm like, I was alone in Kyoto. I'm walking down the street, and these school kids, I mean, they were not super young. They were probably maybe like ninth grade. So whatever, however that is, like 12 years old, something like that. And a group of them approached me, and they had a school assignment to ask questions to foreigners. In Japan. So they're speaking to me in like their broken English. They're super cute, like Japanese broken English. And they're asking me questions. And I loved it. Like, it was just like, they were so young and cute. And it was so, you could tell that it was a big deal for them to even be talking to like a foreigner,
Right.
That I remember just being so patient, and just, I wanted to make sure they had a good experience of dealing with foreigners. So I understand your positivity, but maybe it's like just happened to me too much here, where it's just like, so I can't say I hate it, but it's something that I'm going to have to probably go with, like a live with. For me, it's just like, I don't really like it. I feel like, I'm telling you, it happens to me like every few months. Like, I think over the years, I've done it like dozens of times, like surveys about all kinds of stuff.
Really? Okay. Well, yeah, I guess like anything, too much of a good thing is just like, ugh, okay, I'm done with this.
Yeah, it's almost like a charity thing when people ask you for money. It's like I want to be able to say, like, I already filled out my survey for the month.
I gave blood at the office. Leave me alone.
That's right.
All right.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I'd like to give a special thanks to all of our lovely patrons. As you know, we don't run ads and we don't have sponsors, so we really do appreciate the support we get from our patrons. If you want to learn more, just head to bangkokpodcast.com/support. And if you want to get in touch with us, it's easy. Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We are very polite, and if you write, we will answer.
Right on. And you can also find each episode on YouTube, and you can also follow us online, where we post each episode and carry on conversations with you, our big listeners. You can also reach out to me directly on Twitter, where I am BKK Greg. So thanks for listening, everyone. Welcome back, Ed, and we'll see you back here next week. So this week, man, to welcome you back, you're up.
Okay. I'm going to go to the bathroom, and I'm going to think of something. Okay.
That's where all great thinking happens.
That's right. Give me a minute.
All right.